Star Wars is better. So, funny story about this video. I had it all scripted out, ready to go, and it took me a while actually to finally figure out how I wanted to write it all out. And so I finally did. Yesterday, or Wednesday, because I'm taping this on a Thursday. But yeah, I had it typed up, ready to go Wednesday night. Thursday morning, got up to record, and it just wasn't working right. I didn't really like how it was going, and finally I hit a rhythm, and the video ended up being almost, well, it was well over half an hour long, and I didn't want to do that to you all, because as short as my attention span is, I've seen the numbers. So I decided, well, let's scrap that then. And here we are. So it's not going to be as scripted as I had originally intended. I know last week worked really well scripted because of what was being talked about. But I also realized that in how this all played out, kind of a really good real-world example of how my dyspraxia, ADHD, and autism all play together, and I struggle with time management and things like that. Case in point, I'm quickly cobbling this together Thursday night so that way I can get this out Friday to meet my my upload deadline that I set myself. So anyway, enjoy. So instead of doing a scripted video, I figured we would go through some of the information that I have found together, and as things strike me as we go through it, I would comment on it, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, because this is more of a conversation starter than the full conversation. Apologize for the mouse movements. So here we are. Symptoms of developmental coordination disorder, also known as dyspraxia in children. Developmental coordination disorder, DCD, can cause a wide range of problems. Some of these may be noticeable at an early age, while others may only become obvious as your child gets older. Problems in infants. Delays in reaching normal developmental milestones can be an early sign of DCD in young children. For example, your child may take slightly longer than expected to roll over, sit, or crawl, or walk. You may also notice that your child shows unusual body positions or postures during their first year, has difficulty playing with toys that involve good coordination, such as stacking bricks. I did have trouble with some basic shape puzzles that I had as a kid. They had some thumbtack grips on them that I had trouble with, and also shape awareness and spatial awareness just was not there, so I struggled with those. Has some difficulty learning to eat with cutlery. That is also true. I had trouble with that. These signs might come and go. Problems in older children. As your child gets older, they may develop more noticeable physical difficulties plus problems in other areas. And I'm going to take a drink of water right quick. And this is where a lot of my experience comes in, or at least my being aware of it and me having memory of it. Problems with movement and coordination are the main symptoms of DCD. Children may have difficulty with playground activities such as hopping, jumping, running, and catching or kicking a ball. They often avoid joining because of their lack of coordination and may find physical education difficult. Yes, I definitely struggled with this. Still do to a certain extent, but that's partly because of the emotional memory. But yeah, I struggled with that. and I still resist participating in physical activity and sport. Walking up and down stairs. I didn't have a lot of experience with this in the first decade of my life because our house was one story. But I can tell you that within the first 6 months of us moving into our new house when I was about 12 or 13, I had broken a toe. So there you go. I couldn't climb trees. A lot of kids climb trees. I couldn't climb trees. Also, I couldn't ride a bike. Still can. I learned, didn't retain it, and just didn't have the coordination for it. Writing, drawing, and using scissors. Yes, I had trouble with that, in kindergarten especially. My mother was a volunteer teacher assistant, probably to keep an eye on me. They probably wanted her there. And I couldn't physically grip the scissors. I didn't have the mandible for it. So she would have to actually put them in my hand and wrap my fingers around the way that they were supposed to be held and then guide me as I cut. For years I had trouble cutting things evenly. Still do to a certain extent, but I've learned a little bit better. So it is what it is. Their handwriting and drawings may appear scribbled and less developed compared to other children their age. I did struggle with this. I worked hard at my handwriting, though, and it now looks like calligraphy or the Founding Fathers. And I'll share more about that later in other videos. I may even show examples of my handwriting because I am rather proud of it, and I feel like I should be. Getting dressed. Doing up buttons and tying shoelaces. Yes, I did struggle with this. I still struggle with tying shoelaces. Although, again, as I've grown into adulthood, I have found coping mechanisms that help mitigate a lot of the appearance of having difficulty anyway. Keeping still. They may swing or move their arms and legs a lot. Yes, I did. And I still do. I've been rather moving quite a lot while I've been doing this, so it has stayed with me. A child with DCD may appear awkward and clumsy. I did. And they may bump into objects. I'm sure I did. Drop things and fall over a lot. That much I don't necessarily remember happening a lot, but it is highly possible. This in itself isn't necessarily a sign of DCD. Take another swig of water. As many children who appear clumsy actually have all the normal movement or motor skills for their age. Some children with DCD may also become less fit than other children. Yeah. As their poor performance in sport may result in them being reluctant to exercise. Yes, I 100% agree with that statement. Additional problems. As well as difficulties related to movement and coordination, children with DCD can also have other problems such as difficulty concentrating. They may have a poor attention span and find it difficult to focus on one thing for more than a few minutes. Yes, but I also conversely have the ADHD and autism hyperfocus beam. That God help you if you try to get in the way of that. You'll end up like the engineer crewman on the Ultimate Computer original series episode of Star Trek, who got in the way of the M5 computer's beam tapping into the energy of the ship. He did. So yeah, that is one thing. Difficulty following instructions and copying information. They may do better in school in a one-to-one situation than in a group. They also may do better with a laptop, to be able to take notes on a laptop, which I think most kids do these days anyway. So they can be guided through work. Excuse me. Being poor at organizing themselves and getting things done. Yes, yes, yes. This led to a lot of pain in my 7th grade year especially, but again, later videos will cover that more in depth. It does get kind of heavy, and I want to keep this light and fluffy. But as we get further into the conversation, we will certainly have, we'll talk about the harder stuff. Being slow to pick up new skills. They need encouragement and repetition to help them learn. Yes. Difficulty making friends. I don't know if I did or not, honestly. But again, not all of these mean DCD, and you can have DCD and not have all of these things. They may avoid taking part in team games and may be bullied for being different or clumsy. I did deal with that. I absolutely dealt with that. Behavioral problems, often stemming from a child's frustration with their symptoms. I internalized a lot, so there was no outward behavioral issues, but I did internalize a lot, and it affected my self-esteem. Although children with DCD may have poor coordination and some additional problems, other aspects of development, for example, thinking and talking, are usually unaffected. Related conditions. Children with DCD may also have other conditions, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, dyslexia, and autism. Some children with DCD have difficult coordinating movements required to produce clear speech. I did have that a little bit, although not much, and you wouldn't know it by listening to me. So that's in children. I figured it'd be fun to look at in adults as well. There's a lot of repeat with this just because, it stays with you. We can skip the first paragraph because it's basically excuse me. I'm going to leave that yawn in because it's late. Symptoms of dyspraxia. Symptoms of dyspraxia can vary between individuals and may change over time. You may find routine tasks difficult and coping at work may be hard. If you have dyspraxia, you may have problems with coordination, balance, and movement, learning new skills, thinking and remembering information at work and in leisure activities, daily living skills such as dressing or preparing meals to time, writing, typing, drawing, and grasping small objects. Social situations, dealing with your emotions, time management, planning, and personal organization. Dyspraxia should not be confused with other disorders affecting movement such as cerebral palsy and or stroke. It can affect people of all intellectual abilities. And again, this was our tertiary glance at it and kind of introduce a lot of people that may be watching that don't know anything about any of this to these concepts. And then as we delve further into it, we'll talk more in depth. So, yeah, let's move on. So as you see, there's a lot to take in. And again, I'm going to put all of that in the description. You're free to look through all of it or none of it. I would encourage you to do it. It's a great conversation piece. But yeah, hats off to the NHS for putting all of that together. And once again, my thanks to the UK for really taking the lead on all of this. But yeah, so that's really the introduction. This is day one. But next week, we're going to talk about how my faith has impacted how I view dyspraxia, autism, things like that, and flip that around and look at how all of that has impacted my faith and how I view theology and, especially things like theology of the body. Well, when your body is not coordinated, what does that mean? And how liturgy has helped me cope with that and given me, a way to use my body in relating to the divine in a way that I didn't have prior. So we're going to cover that next week. We're also going to talk about some of some famous people throughout history that may or did or do have dyspraxia. So feel free to look those up. There are several, one of whom is a very famous wizard. He's also British. But we will talk about one of the giants in the Christian faith, at least to me, and I am convinced that he did face challenges with dyspraxia. I do think he was on the autism spectrum, and two, I do think he had dyspraxia. So we'll talk about him next week. No spoilers. I'm not going to tell you who. But if you know me, you know. So we'll talk about him and some other famous people. And then after that, probably the week after, or the next couple of weeks after, we'll talk about both, kind of the back and forth, the challenges I faced, and I alluded to some of the bullying and things like that. We'll cover those. We'll cover the challenges and the frustrations and the anguish and the hurt and all of that. We'll definitely cover that. But I also don't want this to be a conversation solely focused on that. I want us to be able to have a conversation and give a voice to people on the spectrum, whether or not they're able, verbal or not, help them have a voice, and also help dyspraxics also have a voice. I feel like we need to have the conversation. And I'm certainly not the only voice, and I'm not the best qualified voice, but it's a start. So that's kind of why I wanted to do this set, and it looks like it's going to turn into more than one video, which is great, because yay, content. Anyway, so that's where we are. If I feel like it's a good idea to break some of it up and kind of have a fun little thing in there, in the middle of all that, then hey, awesome. But yeah, so feel free to ask questions. I don't want this to be just a one-way street where I'm just diatribing, although you're coming to the channel to listen to me diatribe, I hope. Or as my mom calls it, pontificating. Hey Mom, I have an outlet for that now. It's called YouTube. Yay! Anyway, so yeah, I want it to be a conversation. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section of really any video, but especially this one. Visit. I got flack for this last week. Visit our Facebook group. People kept pointing out that I said the Facebook. The Facebook group. The group associated with this channel on Facebook. And the Twitter account that's associated with this channel on Twitter. So I know they're not called the Facebook and the Twitter. Let's just put that there. I did get a kick out of it, though. But yeah, so check out our Facebook group. Join in on the conversation. I would love to get some stuff popping in there. And certainly join on the... I almost did it. Come visit my Twitter page, and the links are on the channel, so go to that. If I will respond to DMs on Twitter because I'm a small enough channel that I can afford to do that. So yeah, if you want to reach out and have a question that you don't necessarily want broadcast all over the place, hit me up. that way, or on Facebook, and we can go from there. So once again, I want to thank you for stopping by. I hope as I'm learning and growing and developing my personality on here that you are entertained and also informed. So come back next week, and I'll see you next time.